The relentless hum of machinery echoed through the corridors as Casey secured the final bolt on the malfunctioning life support panel. He wiped the sweat from his brow, leaving a streak of grime across his forehead. Just another day for a humble technician on the Terra 1 space station. Or so it seemed. Casey's gaze flitted around the hallway, ever vigilant for trouble. Old habits die hard. Though he had long abandoned his past as the infamous bounty hunter Raxer the Vicious, his instincts remained sharp. A disturbance at the far end of the corridor caught his attention. Two security guards were escorting a striking alien woman with shimmering azure skin. Her silver hair flowed down her back, and her violet eyes darted around anxiously. "Please, I mean no harm," she implored. "I seek only refuge through honest work." The officers paid her no heed, pushing her toward the detention area. As they passed by, her desperate gaze met Casey's, sparking something in him. Without giving it much thought, Casey called out, "Wait." The guards stopped, eyeing him with suspicion. "What's going on?" one of the officers demanded. Casey tried to sound casual. "I overheard that she's looking for work. I could use some help around my quarters. Been meaning to hire a housekeeper." The woman's eyes lit up with hope. "Oh, I would be delighted to serve as your housekeeper. I am a diligent worker and learn quickly." The guards exchanged glances. "She's an undocumented alien," the shorter one explained. "No papers, no ID. Protocol says we detain her." Casey shrugged. "I'll vouch for her. Fill out whatever forms you need. I'll take full responsibility." After a brief hesitation, the officers relented. "Fine. She's your problem now. But if there's any trouble—" "I understand," Casey cut in, giving them a reassuring nod. As the officers departed, the woman turned to Casey, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you, kind sir. I am Elara. I promise to work diligently and not be a burden." Casey grunted. "I'm Casey. Let's get you to my quarters." As they walked, Casey studied Elara closely. Her story seemed off, and her demeanor didn't quite fit that of a desperate refugee. There was something hidden in her eyes, and Casey, of all people, understood secrets. When they reached his modest living space, Elara looked around with thinly veiled disdain. "Oh my, you certainly could use some housekeeping." Casey bristled. "It's not that bad." Elara arched an elegant eyebrow. "There's a half-eaten ration bar growing mold on your nightstand." Casey muttered, "Yeah, I've been meaning to clean that up." Elara's tone was dripping with sarcasm. "Well, I suppose I should get started. Where do you keep your cleaning supplies?" Casey blinked. I'm not sure I have any."
Elara sighed.
"Wonderful. I don't suppose this station has a supply depot where we could procure the necessary items?" "Yeah, there's a commissary on level 3, Casey replied. "But you don't have to start right away. Why don't you tell me more about yourself? Where are you from?" Elara's expression shifted uneasily before she composed herself. "You know how it is. Political unrest, economic instability. I simply wanted a fresh start somewhere new." Casey's instincts were alert, but he chose not to press further. "All right, make yourself at home. I need to finish my shift, but I'll be back in a few hours. Try not to turn my place into a palace while I'm gone." As he headed out, Elara called after him, "Thank you again." "Truly." Casey grunted in acknowledgement, his mind racing with questions about his enigmatic new housekeeper. The rest of his shift passed in a blur of routine maintenance and anxious thoughts about Elara. When he finally returned, he was surprised to find his quarters sparkling clean and smelling faintly of citrus. Elara stood in the center of the room, hands on her hips, looking satisfied. "How did you?" Casey began, taking in the transformation. Elara shrugged. "I borrowed a few things from your neighbors. They were quite accommodating once I explained the situation. I also took the liberty of preparing a meal. Your ration packs were rather sad, so I improvised." Casey's stomach growled at the mention of food. When had he last eaten a real meal? "You didn't have to do all this," he said. "It's the least I could do to repay your kindness," Elara replied, gesturing to the small table where 2 plates sat steaming. "Please sit." As they ate, Casey noticed Elara's impeccable table manners, which hinted at a refined upbringing. "This is incredible," he said between bites. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" A shadow crossed Elara's face. Oh, you pick up skills when you must fend for yourself? Casey probed further. You mentioned political unrest earlier. What can you tell me about the situation in your home system? Elara stiffened. Corrupt officials, power-hungry warlords, the usual chaos. I try not to dwell on such unpleasantness. Her casual dismissal of the situation raised Casey's suspicions, but before he could question her further, a priority alert chimed on his comm unit. Damn, he muttered. There's a disturbance in the docking bay. I've got to check it out. Elara's eyes widened with fear. Is that common? Security issues, I mean. Casey shrugged as he stood. Not really. Probably just some drunk traders getting rowdy. I wouldn't worry about it. He hesitated at the door. You'll be okay here by yourself? Elara forced a smile. Of course. I'll just finish cleaning up. Be careful out there. As Casey jogged toward the docking bay, his instinct screamed that something was wrong. The corridor was eerily quiet as he approached, his training kicking in. The sounds of raised voices reached him, and he peered around the corner to find a group of 5 heavily armed mercenaries threatening the dockworkers with a hollow image that looked suspiciously like Elara. We know she came through here, a burly mercenary growled. Blue skin, silver hair. Where is she? The terrified worker shook his head. I don't know who you're talking about. Lots of people come through here. The mercenary leader, enraged, backhanded the worker. Wrong answer. Maybe this will jog your memory. He raised his pulse rifle. Without thinking, Casey sprang into action. He vaulted over a stack of crates, kicking the mercenary leader in the chest. As the alien staggered back, Casey took his weapon and fired stun blasts at the nearest mercenaries. The remaining 2 opened fire, but Casey dove behind a cargo loader, the smell of ozone filling the air. With pinpoint precision, he took them both down with headshots. The fight lasted less than 10 seconds. As the echoes of gunfire faded, Casey became aware of the shocked stares of the dock workers. You should probably call security and let them know there was an attempted assault. I'll just be going now. He made a hasty exit, his mind racing. Those weren't ordinary thugs. They were professional hunters, and they were after Elara. What had he gotten himself into? Back at his quarters, Casey found Elara pacing nervously. Her eyes widened at his disheveled appearance. What happened? Are you all right? Casey fixed her with a hard stare. Cut the act. Who are you really, and why are mercenaries tearing apart the station looking for you? Elara's shoulders slumped in defeat. I suppose there's no point in further deception. The truth is, before she could finish, alarms began blaring throughout the station. A computerized voice announced, "Attention all personnel. Unauthorized vessels detected on approach vector. Battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Casey and Elara exchanged a look of mutual understanding. Whatever secrets they each held, they were now in this together. We need to move, Casey said grimly. I've got a feeling those mercenaries were just the welcoming party. As they raced out of the room, neither noticed the small tracking device hidden in Elara's clothing, broadcasting their location to unknown parties. The hunt was on. Casey grabbed Elara's arm and pulled her into the corridor. The station shuddered from distant explosions. We need to get to the escape pods. Casey shouted over the din. Elara's eyes widened. No, we can't leave the station. There are innocent people here. Casey gritted his teeth. You've got a point, but my instincts scream that we need to get you to safety. Fine. We'll head to the command center and see if we can help coordinate the defense. They navigated through chaos-filled hallways, dodging panicked civilians and frantic security personnel. As they rounded a corner, a group of armed intruders appeared, their armor bearing the insignia of the core empire, Elara's supposed homeland. There she is, one of the intruders shouted. Capture the princess. Casey's head snapped towards Elara, who looked both terrified and resigned. Without time for questions, he shoved her behind him and charged. His combat reflexes took over, disarming one attacker and using the weapon to take down 2 more. A spinning kick dispatched the 4th. The last intruder raised his hands in surrender. Please, don't kill me. Casey froze, recognizing the voice. How do you know my name? Taking advantage of his hesitation, The attacker fumbled for a concealed weapon. Instinctively, Casey fired a stun blast, dropping the man. Breathing heavily, he turned to find Elara staring at him in awe. "How did you do that?" she whispered. "Lucky shot," Casey said, his mind racing. "Come on. We need to keep moving." As they continued toward the command center, Elara peppered him with questions. "Where did you learn to fight like that? You're no ordinary technician, are you?" "I could say the same about you, princess," Casey retorted. Elara flinched. "It's complicated. I promise I'll explain everything once we're safe." They burst into the command center to find it in disarray. Officers scrambled to handle multiple crises. "Status report," Casey barked, slipping into old command habits. A frazzled lieutenant turned to him. "Who the hell are you?" Casey cut him off. "What's the situation?" The officer swallowed hard. "Multiple core warships have surrounded the station. They're demanding we hand over a VIP, or they'll destroy us. Our shields are failing, and we don't have the firepower to fight back." Casey's mind raced. He glanced at Elara, who looked stricken with guilt. "Open a channel to the core flagship," he ordered. The officer hesitated. "But, sir—" "Do it," Casey snapped. Moments later, the stern face of a core admiral appeared on the main view screen. "This is Admiral Vexer of the Core Empire. Surrender the fugitive princess immediately, or we will reduce your station to atoms." Casey stepped forward. "This is Raxer the Vicious. Perhaps you've heard of me." The admiral's eyes widened in shock. "Raxer? That's just a myth." "Oh, I assure you, I'm quite real," Casey said, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. "And I currently have your runaway princess. Here's what's going to happen. You'll call off your attack and withdraw your ships, or I'll hunt down every last one of you and turn your skulls into drinking cups. Do we have an understanding?" Admiral Vexer sputtered in rage, but fear was evident in his eyes. "You can't." "Try me," Casey snarled. A tense moment passed before the admiral deflated. "Very well. We will withdraw for now. But this isn't over, Raxer. The Empire does not forgive and does not forget." The transmission ended, and the command center erupted in a mix of awe and terror. Casey turned to Elara. "Well, don't just stand there. Get those shields back up and prepare for any treachery." As the officers scrambled to obey, Elara approached Casey cautiously. "You're him, aren't you? The legendary bounty hunter. But why are you protecting me?" Casey sighed. "It's complicated. Come on. We need to talk privately." They retreated to a small conference room adjacent to the command center. Once the door was closed, Elara rounded on him. "Explain. Now." Casey ran a hand through his hair. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Are you really Raxer the Vicious? Why are you hiding on this backwater station? And why are you helping me?" "Yes, I'm Raxer, or was," Casey said. "I left that life behind, tried to disappear. As for why I'm helping you, I don't know. Maybe I saw something of myself in you, a fellow fugitive." Elara's eyes softened. "I understand more than you know. I am indeed Princess Elara of the Core Empire. I fled because my uncle, the current emperor, murdered my father and plans to use me as a puppet ruler." Casey whistled low. "That's quite a story, Your Highness." Elara flinched at the title. "Please, just Elara. I've had enough of royal treatment." Before Casey could respond, his communicator chirped. He answered to hear a familiar, gravelly voice on the other end. "Raxer, you old snake. Long time no see." Casey's blood ran cold. "GRA, how did you find this frequency?" The grizzled info broker chuckled. "Please, you think you're the only one with friends in low places? I've got a job for you, if you're interested. Very high-profile target. Royal even." Casey's eyes locked with Elara's. She shook her head frantically. "Sorry, GRA. I'm out of the game. Find someone else." "Don't be hasty," GRA replied. "The pay is astronomical, and word is you're already in the thick of it. Why not profit from the situation?" Casey's mind raced. If he refused outright, GRA would know something was up. But if he played along— "I'm listening," Casey said carefully. GRA outlined the details of the job. Capture Princess Elara of the Core Empire, dead or alive. As GRA spoke, Casey's fingers flew over his communicator, sending a coded message to an old contact. If anyone could trace GRA's location, it was her. Interesting proposition, Casey said when GRA finished. Let me think it over and get back to you. Don't take too long. This offer has an expiration date, GRA warned before the call disconnected. Elara looked at Casey with a mixture of fear and hope. You're not really considering it, are you? Casey shook his head. Of course not. But now we know who's pulling the strings. Your uncle must have hired GRA to coordinate the hunt for you. Elara slumped in relief. So what do we do now? Before Casey could answer, alarms blared once more. They rushed back to the command center to find chaos. Report. Casey barked. Multiple ships decloaking all around us, an officer stammered. It's the core fleet. They never left. Casey cursed. Of course, the Admiral wouldn't give up so easily. Shields holding for now, but we're massively outgunned. Elara gasped. I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. She outlined a desperate gambit, audacious and incredibly dangerous. Casey had to admit it was their best hope for survival. You're right, he said grimly. I don't like it, but it might be our only shot. As they prepared to execute Elara's plan, Casey couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. His carefully constructed life of anonymity was crumbling, but as he looked at Elara, this enigmatic princess who had turned his world upside down, he realized he didn't mind as much as he thought he would. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The command center erupted into frenzied activity as they raced against time. Elara's plan was bold, perhaps even foolhardy, but it was their best hope. As they moved to implement their desperate scheme, neither of them noticed the small blinking device attached to Elara's clothing. It continued to broadcast their location, setting the stage for a confrontation that was far from over. The future hung in the balance as the station shuddered under the pressure of impending conflict. The hunt had only just begun. The command center was a whirlwind of activity. Lights flashed, alarms blared, and officers scrambled to manage the chaos. Casey and Elara stood in the center of it all, the weight of their plan pressing down on them. Elara, you sure this is going to work? Casey asked, his voice barely audible over the din. Elara nodded, her face set with determination. It has to. We need to make them think we're preparing for a full-scale counterattack. It'll buy us the time we need to disable their primary weapons and knock out their command systems. Casey frowned. It's risky. If they realize it's a bluff, they'll either retreat or destroy us, Elara finished for him. But if we can buy enough time, we might be able to turn the tide. Casey weighed the odds. He had been in tight spots before, but this was different. There was no room for error. All right, let's get to it. What do you need me to do? Elara gestured to a console. Help me override the communication system. We need to broadcast false orders to the core fleet. Make them think we're preparing for an all-out offensive. Casey nodded and moved to the console. As he began typing, Elara worked beside him, her fingers flying over the controls. The screen flickered with lines of code and tactical maps. Almost there, Elara said, her voice steady despite the pressure. Just a few more adjustments, and we'll be ready to transmit the false orders. As they worked, Casey couldn't help but steal glances at Elara. She was a paradox, regal yet grounded, a fugitive yet fiercely determined to save the lives of those around her. He'd seen many in her position before, but there was something different about her, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. Done, Elara announced triumphantly. The false orders are in place. Now we just need to set up the distraction. Casey raised an eyebrow. Distraction? Elara smiled grimly. Yes. We're going to make it look like we're launching a full-scale assault. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. The door to the command center slid open, and a tech officer burst in, breathless. Sir, we've detected a surge in energy readings from the core fleet. They're preparing for an offensive. Casey and Elara exchanged a quick glance. That's our cue, Casey said. Let's get moving. They sprinted down the hallways to the station's control room, where Elara quickly set to work on another console. We need to initiate a series of simulated attacks, she said. It'll make it look like we're launching a coordinated strike. Casey worked beside her, inputting commands to generate false sensor readings and holographic projections. The station's display screens began to show waves of ships approaching the core fleet, their weapons powering up. Meanwhile, in the core flagship's command center, Admiral Vexer glared at the display showing the simulated attack. "They're bluffing," he growled. "But we can't take any chances. Prepare for evasive maneuvers and increase shields." On the station, Elara monitored the response. "It's working. They're buying it. But we don't have much time before they realize it's a ruse." Casey nodded. "Let's get to the engineering bay. We need to disable their primary weapons and command systems before they figure out what's going on." They raced through the labyrinthine corridors, their footsteps echoing in the silence. When they reached the engineering bay, Casey quickly accessed the control systems and began initiating a series of overrides. Elara's eyes darted around the room, her mind racing. "Once we've disabled their weapons, we need to make sure they can't call for reinforcements." Casey's fingers flew over the controls. "I'm on it." As they worked, the station shuddered again, reminder of the ongoing battle. The lights flickered, and the comms system crackled with static. Casey glanced at Elara. "You've been in the core fleet's sights for a while, haven't you?" Elara's eyes were distant. "Yes. I was targeted after I fled my home. They want to eliminate me and any chance of reclaiming the throne." Casey frowned. "Why not just go to another station or planet? Why stay in this mess?" Elara's gaze was resolute. "I can't run forever. I have to find a way to fight back, to stop my uncle from consolidating his power and spreading his tyranny." Casey nodded, understanding her resolve. "All right, let's finish this." With the overrides in place, Casey initiated the final sequence. The engineering bay screens showed the core fleet's weapon systems powering down and their command systems going offline. "Systems disabled," Casey said. "Now we just need to get to the command center and make sure they can't recover." As they made their way back, the station's alarms blared again, this time with a new urgency. "Unauthorized access detected in engineering bay," the automated voice announced. Casey and Elara exchanged worried glances. "They found us," Casey said. "We need to move. Fast." They reached the command center just as the door slid open, revealing a squad of core soldiers. "There they are," one of them shouted. Casey and Elara dove for cover as the soldiers opened fire. Casey's reflexes kicked in, and he returned fire with precision, taking down several of the attackers. Elara moved with surprising agility, using her alien abilities to deflect blaster fire and neutralize foes. After a fierce battle, the soldiers lay incapacitated on the floor. Casey and Elara were left breathing heavily, their faces smeared with sweat and grime. "Is everyone all right?" Elara asked, her voice strained. Casey nodded. "We're good, but we need to secure the command center and get those shields back online." As they worked to restore the station's defensive systems, the core fleet began to retreat. The simulated attack and the real damage to their weapons systems had forced them to reconsider their approach. Minutes later, the command center was finally quiet. The tension in the air was palpable as Casey and Elara took stock of the situation. "We did it," Casey said, his voice tinged with exhaustion. "The fleet's withdrawing, at least for now." Elara collapsed into a nearby chair, her face pale. "Thank you, Casey. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't intervened." Casey waved off the gratitude. "It's not over yet. Your uncle will send more forces, and we're not out of the woods." Elara nodded. "I know, but for now, we need to regroup and figure out our next move. We can't stay here, not with the core fleet still in the area." Casey looked at her, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "You know, you're not like any other royal I've ever met." Elara's eyes met his, a mixture of gratitude and determination. "And you're not like any other bounty hunter. Maybe there's hope for both of us yet." As they prepared to leave the command center, a familiar voice crackled over Casey's communicator. "Raxer, did you really think I'd let you off that easily?" Casey's blood ran cold. It was GRA. "What do you want now?" "I've got a little more information for you," Giara said, his voice dripping with malice. "Seems you've made quite a few enemies. You might want to watch your back. And remember, I'm always watching." The transmission ended, leaving Casey and Elara in silence. The weight of their predicament pressed down on them, but they knew they had to keep moving. "Let's get to the escape pods," Casey said. "We need to plan our next move and find a way to stay one step ahead." As they made their way through the station, the future remained uncertain. The hunt was far from over, and the stakes were higher than ever. But with each step, they were forging a bond that might just be their greatest weapon against the forces arrayed against them. Together, they would face whatever came next and whatever secrets their paths might reveal.